call this meeting of the Bloomfield Township Planning Commission to order, the February 19th meeting. We have a quorum, 4 of us, so we have a quorum, but any motions that are brought would have to be unanimous in order to carry, because you need 4 votes, just so you all know. And on the agenda tonight, there's only one item, and that's to introduce amendments for zoning ordinance for ground mechanical equipment, an update on that. So that's the only thing. But for anybody who's watching, I want to welcome everybody to the Planning Commission meeting. And we are a 7-member body. We're appointed by the Bloomfield Township Board of Trustees per the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. It's a recommending body only. We recommend to the Board of Trustees what we think should be or shouldn't be done. And they have the final authority to approve any matters involving site plan review and land use development. So I just said we have one item on the agenda, and I hope that anybody watching that has never seen one of these meetings before, this helps to they can understand what we're doing. So the first item we have is approval of the minutes of the, I don't even know what date was that?
January 3rd?
The January 3rd meeting. And we got it in our packet.
Approved.
Move to approve. There's a motion to approve.
Okay.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So getting to the discussion that we have tonight, Patty, you're going to introduce that?
And it doesn't look like we have any public comment, so we'll
Well, I don't see anybody here, right?
skip through that. So the discussion, yes. So we are bringing to the board's attention that as we passed last year, some amendments to our zoning ordinance as it relates to mechanical equipment in all of our districts, residential and non-residential districts. The term of ground-mounted mechanical equipment was a topic of conversation, and we wanted to make sure that it was very clear that that includes air conditioning units, generators, transformers, pool equipment, and other related equipment. And through the course of then enforcing the amendments from our most recent zoning ordinance amendment and regarding its placement and screening, so forth, we found that we believe there is some further clarification necessary as it relates to the placement of those ground-mounted electrical equipment. And more specifically, currently the ordinance is very specific when it relates to if you want to have some ground-mounted mechanical equipment, that you can locate it within the side yard, rear yard, or secondary frontage under very specific conditions, such as setbacks, but also the more underlying is that it has to be immediately adjacent to the building it's serving. So the practical application of that immediately adjacent to the building that it's serving was a conversation that we had with our inspectors. So as residents and property owners are pulling permits to install this equipment, alongside that building permit application is the specifications for the unit. And oftentimes either it's accompanying the application or it resides with the contractor in the field at the address. And the inspectors very specifically ask for those specs as it relates to the proper installation of that unit. So generally, we more frequently talk about generators, air conditioning units, and pool equipment. And where up until more recently, much of the manufacturer's spec referenced a 3-foot clearance between the unit and the wall in the residence or the wall that it was serving. And that's either for access, air intake, and serviceability. Well, more recently, we've been getting a lot of applications where they're asking for a 5-foot clearance between the unit and the building. And that's resulted in the applicants being requested to make application to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We had a comfort level of allowing for a 3-foot offset, knowing that it was compliant with the building codes, because all of the criteria specific to these ground-mounted mechanicals have to also comply with the pertinent building codes, and that 3-foot was the standard that the township was historically applying. When this occurred over the last several years, in fact, even last year we had only about 10 of them that was very specific to just this, we felt that we really should look at an amendment so that if there is an appreciation of what those standards are relevant to the current applications that we're getting through our building permit. Now, this doesn't say that it allows for then that unit to be any closer to a sod lot line, or that it would not necessarily need to be screened by evergreens. It's just saying that it can be a little bit further from that wall, but you still have to meet all those setbacks and all those locational criteria within the ordinance. So to accomplish this, we added, if you look at our ordinance amendment, a statement that says placement of ground-mounted mechanical equipment shall be immediately adjacent to the residential and non-residential building and shall be no greater than 5 feet from the building intended to be served. This is meeting, we believe, the intent of the location concerns with our residential and non-residential areas by wanting them close to the building itself and not necessarily in a remote location where it'd have more inclined to impact the adjacent neighbor or the adjoining property. We want it as close and snugged up to the building as possible, and then provide that screening that we are looking for. And so it's not suggesting that we're eliminating that reference of immediately adjacent, but in this specific circumstance regarding ground-mounted mechanicals, we're saying, but in no case can it be greater than 5 feet. The other clarification that we would like to introduce to the board is that we also, over the last 5 years, have had the occasion where applicants are looking for installing ground-mounted mechanical equipment inside an accessory structure. For example, pool equipment in a pool house, a generator in a detached garage. Because technically it doesn't comply with the ordinance, we've been requiring those residents and property owners to have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And so those have been routinely approved, as well as the others that I described to you earlier. And we found that, again, we're not identifying those more common applications that are being routinely approved by the community, by the township, via the ZBA. And then it affords, at least in that specific instance, it's screened because it's inside the building. The sound decibel still would have to be applied to, but more likely, it is muffled and baffled because it's interior to a building. And that, in all cases, it still has to comply with the relevant building codes, whether it's for ventilation and so forth, and location. So we feel that again, is one of those variances that have been somewhat extraneous. And so combining that example and then the one regarding that 5-foot separation, just this past year, we had 16 ZBA applications that relate to those two, where we feel that by adhering to the provisions of the ordinance, we still get compliance, but it's not necessarily via having to apply and get approval, but it would be done by right, if you will, as long as it would comply. And our plan reviewer, who reviews the plans before issuing permits, would confirm that those conditions and those dimensions and screening would be met before that permit would be issued or permit would be closed out. So that's what we're wanting to introduce to you tonight, answering questions that you have. And then if you're agreeable, maybe look to setting a public hearing date next month to then notice accordingly, and we'll have some further presentations for you. I did include in the agenda packet some examples from our more recent zoning boards of appeals. I believe I did.
You did.
Okay, good. And that just demonstrates that we have that the ZBA is very conscious of where these units are located, the impact to adjoining property, screening is a priority, and we have heard from some homeowners associations as well who will sign off and then be part of the review process or the application process, for example, at the village. And because of some circumstances that some of these neighborhoods have, they're routinely having to come before the zoning board of appeals. So I think there'll be, support by many of the homeowner group, for this
There'll be more
amendment.
support by the ZBA members.
And more support
Right.
from the ZBA members.
Sure.
That's right.
That's on their
So
agenda.
does anyone have any questions or any clarifications that I can afford?
I just have one comment, it's a
Right.
technicality.
Yeah.
Because I apply for these, and I never had to apply for a variance for one inside of an accessory structure, I didn't even know. That's a good point to learn. But if we could just add one single word, placement of ground mounted mechanical equipment shall be installed immediately, used the resident or non-resident shall be, and if we add the word clearance, shall be no greater than 5 feet, and I'll tell you why I say that, because technically, if the unit, let's say air conditioning unit's 2 feet by 2 feet, and I put it 5 feet from the house, it's technically greater than, yes, why leave that for somebody to argue about? Because then the unit is greater
7
than
feet at
5
the
feet,
outside?
because it could be construed, somebody, oh, that's 7 feet away, and it's close to my house, and then you'll have to argue with somebody. If we just insert one word before the word shall, that says clearance, and clearance shall be no greater than 5 feet, if you don't mind, I think.
No.
It's a technicality, but somebody could argue the point.
Well, and that's another reason why we're trying to add illustrations, just for that point, because I could see someone would say, oh, no, that's 7 feet, that's not 5 feet.
Because when I first read this, I mean, just quickly, and I opened it up, it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Mhm.
If it's 5 feet, that means the air conditioner's 2 by 2, that's 3, but that's not the intent, so.
Right, right.
For what it's worth.
Okay.
But
Okay.
this is
There you
great.
go.
I mean,
Good.
everybody is gonna be happy
Well-
with this.
This is driven, I think you said, this is driven because the requirements from the manufacturers now are specifying a greater distance from the structure. Is that right?
In part, yes.
Okay. Do you think that if we do this, that now everybody's just going to say, yeah, 5 feet, that's what we're going to do, regardless of whether it needs it or not? Or does it matter?
What's the difference?
I don't know.
Well, I think,
We have it, well, there may
Yeah,
be a
please go
difference
ahead.
because
Well,
we have it
I
close to the
would-
house, so it stays close to that house and not closer to the neighbor. Even though it would be within, it won't encroach into the setback. The further away from your house it is, the closer to the neighbor it is.
True.
So I'm just wondering if it's going to say to everybody, well, now let's just make it 5 feet. It's a lot easier for, I don't know if they will or not.
Well, I would, because even if the manufacturer only required 3, because it's easier to service,
Okay.
you get more airflow,
And there, see, that's what I was getting to. So that makes it, every one of them now a little bit closer by 2 feet to the next house. Okay,
But-
now,
But what's the difference? It still needs to qualify with the.
no, wait,
adjoining
here's what
neighbor.
I'm thinking. Okay, let me just say this.
Okay.
Supposing we word it that we leave it, that's 3 feet is what it is, except, and make it an exception if the requirement of the manufacturer is to make it the extra 2 feet. So that not everybody is going to want to make it 5 feet. If the unit itself says in the plans, 3 feet is all you need, then that's what it should be. That's what I'm thinking. And that the exception is if the manufacturer requires that as a part of their specifications, then you don't have to go to it can be done. I'm not sure that's practical, but I'm
No,
just thinking,
because what if you have, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go
What
ahead,
if
go
you
ahead.
have half the factories are saying 3 feet and half are saying 5 feet.
right,
Then you
exactly.
got, this way it just solve, you don't want it more than 5 feet.
Okay.
That's would get crazy. But
All right, I'm just
a
thinking.
good point. I
I'm
understand
thinking
your
that
point.
everybody's going to
Great
want to put it
point.
further away from the house.
Great point.
and I think
Yes and no.
Maybe not. I don't know.
what
That's
part
what
of
I'm
the
asking.
discussion could include is that, we really want to look at the standards that fit Bloomfield Township and that achieves our goals and our objectives. And that not necessarily it's driven by the manufacturer's specs, but it's actually looked upon as more, what is our experience, what seems to be working well with the community. I always like to tell you where we are as far as the zoning board of appeals, because that's a big trigger point for me.
Right.
When I see that they're uniformly approved and that they're not being objected to by
anybody.
adjoining neighbors, then that's telling me that there's a change or a movement to accept something that maybe in the past was a little bit more
Right. Okay.
concerning. So, and if this is, and again, if this works well, and we see that it is really meeting the intent and purpose and the needs of our residents and property owners, then, we've hit the mark. But if it's not, then we'll have to come back. But, to your point, technology is always changing. I mean, just think about, where air conditioning units have come, and sometimes they get bigger and sometimes it gets smaller, but the efficiency, in the sound decibels.
And also, as I mentioned to you earlier, it could change the other way, where all of a sudden, just like fireplaces have changed, it may be able now, we say, well, this unit, we can just put it right up against the house. It doesn't have to be that far away. We don't need it. Just like a fireplace used to have masonry, all masonry and all that for fire protection. Now you don't need it anymore. You can build it in a stud wall because you have two stainless steel tubes, and it's
But on
safe.
the other hand, if Joe Biden gets his way and let's say you can't have a gas furnace, everybody might have to use a,
No more artificial
what's the
gas.
word?
That's just not going to happen.
The heat exchanger, I forget, what is that
Yeah.
called? And that'll have to have more clearance also, so I like this.
What do you mean if Joe Biden gets his way? You're being silly, Mr. Ratzo.
Oh, heat pump, that's the word. It's
Heat
if
pump.
you use a heat pump,
Yeah.
then most likely you need the 5 foot.
Okay. Anyway, let's get back. Let's get
Yeah.
back to
Okay.
what we're talking about. So you think that it's irrelevant that we talk about 5 feet, or just make it all 5 feet and it's just fine.
And I think so, because it also.
With Richie's, I agree with
Yeah,
what
with the
Richie said,
clearance.
though.
And I'll run that, because I will be, and that's why I show at least the illustrations, that we'll update the illustrations and we'll blow them up, because I know these are small, but we'll blow them up so that's very clear. When we measure 5 feet, we're measuring it from the building face to the unit, and that's the measurement of 5 feet.
And that's
Yeah.
all clearance.
Yeah.
Just,
Like that.
okay, I get it.
And that might be, the terminology is clearance. And maybe that I should identify clearance within the illustration name and photograph too, or not photo, but the illustration.
Okay.
But no,
All right.
as
So
long as it's clear.
Any other? Because we want to schedule a public hearing. Okay.
And I'm suggesting March 18th.
Oh,
That
18th.
works
It's
with
the
the-
17th. All right, 18th. Yeah.
March 18th to discuss this.
I think we have a meeting anyway, right? But we're gonna make that meeting part of the public
Public
hearing,
hearing,
will be
yes.
part of an existing
Yeah.
meeting.
Okay. Do we need a motion to do that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we need a motion to schedule a public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
Motion second. Any discussion on that date? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have 4 of us, so we got it. That's it.
Excellent.
All right.
And now I am pleased to present to you
Yeah.
your 2023 annual report. This is a requirement that is in your bylaws, that the planning director and secretary to the planning commission prepares an annual report to the planning commission, of which then you forward on the report to the township board. I, over the years, have expanded the report to not just necessarily speak to the planning commission, but the entire planning division. Because it kind of tells the big story, the overall story of the planning that's occurring, within the planning, building, ordinance department. So the planning commission held 7 meetings last year, of which you can see your attendance at the further end of the report. Very proud of all of you in either having perfect or nearly perfect attendance with the busy lives that you all have. That's very commendable. The planning commission primarily was reviewing site plans with some also involving special land use requests. And then one zoning ordinance amendment. In fact, that was what we were just talking about tonight, having to do with the ground mounted mechanicals, and also we had pergolas and fire pits also amended in our outdoor living patio areas. But this also speaks to the process that when we do have a project, most of the projects that you see involve the design review board, but when you have a site plan application, it's the very first step after we've determined it's a complete application. It stops at the design review board first, And our staff report always includes the motion and the comments forwarding on that application to you. And then in many instances, that site plan application that you are reviewing also involves variances. And so, the next step after your review would be that applicant would have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and hopefully seek a favorable result before ultimately going on to the Township Board, who then has that final authority to grant approval. We did have a good year, a busy year. I did share with the chair that we do have several site plan applications that are in various stages. Sometimes some of them are conversations that they've had with staff and they're looking to see how they need to complete an application to be able to submit. And we have those that have made application, but it's incomplete, so we're waiting for information. And it's those also that are looking for some final revisions from their engineers in many cases, or even some other agencies if it involves the Water Resource Commission or MDOT or the Road Commission of Oakland County. Until that information comes to the department, can we then forward it on to you? And so when you're dealing with other consulting agencies and other review bodies, then it's a scheduling time frame that it seems to be lengthening right now because of just the work that we're seeing that's being generated by the Southeast Michigan. So we do have projects that are on the plate. I want you to think that we don't have anything coming through. We do.
Some of them take 2 years of working on them.
There you go. Yes. Yeah. Richie can kind of give some testimony to that. So we're looking to have a good year coming up, and we continue to look at the ordinance. And on occasion, we engage Giffords Webster, who's our planning consultant, when needed to see if there's some codes that we need to address, and sometimes it's even coming from our township attorney. Should there be some legislation?
These days?
Giffords Webster, planning consultant.
Oh, they do planning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, please.
I have a question. So in going through this packet, in the Zoning Board of Appeals, you list their accomplishments, which means that they either approved or disapproved something, and then that's sort of final. I know what we do here has to go on to the board to get approved, but could we have a roster of things that we approve?
It's in there.
It is?
Well, accomplishments are in there.
Of us?
Yes.
Yeah.
I missed it.
Yeah, it is.
It's page, is that 15? 15, I think?
No?
Yeah,
Planning Commission
we're there.
Oh,
accomplishments.
18. Page
18?
18.
I don't have a number on mine. Oh, yeah, 18. Here it
Very
is.
subtle at the
Looks
lower
like this.
right.
See it. Sorry, I missed it. Thank you.
Well, I did too with the page that is.
All right, I would like to
Too
say
quickly.
that I applaud our planning department for keeping up on top of ordinances and not making them say, well, that's it, that's the ordinance and that's it. At least,
Agreed.
I love the fact that you look at these things and things need to change because of whatever the reason, and it's fluid. It's not just written in stone and that's it. And I think that's great. I think that's very responsive to what's going on. So I thank the planning department for that.
Appreciate that. I'll pass that along.
I can agree to that because I was a member of a ZBA for a period of time. And there were things that were just, there was really never a discussion. It was, boom, next.
No, well, we've done a few of
And
those.
why waste the time?
We've done a few of those
Right, because
from here.
you're supposed to go out and view the property, and they have a lot of things on their agenda. It's like 20 or maybe 30 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, for the short period of time I was on that was a lot of time.
Sure it is.
Because I wanted to do the job, and then I just didn't have the time anymore because I got busy. But
Yeah.
so
Commitment.
I'm pleased to hear all that and the comments from the floor from the people that come before us that work with your office, Patty, and I think universally every one of their comments was very positive how your division helps them through the process and apparently puts it in order for them to make the presentation and understand what the process is. So thank you.
I appreciate
Thank you and
that.
your people.
All right, any other things? All right, and any other items that are not on the agenda that you want to bring up?
Can we
I'm
have
sorry.
a motion?
Oh, a motion, yes, we need a motion to accept this report.
I'll make a motion to support and
Motion.
accept
Motion made,
Planning Division
Second.
Annual Report.
moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, sorry, I forgot. We
Thank you.
need to do
No,
that.
That's okay.
So now, does anybody have anything they want to bring up that's not on the agenda? Going once, twice, okay, next meeting is March 4th. And so, if there's anything gonna be on the agenda for that, we'll find out.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Then the
Okay,
18th is when we have this
Public hearing.
setback and construction for generators and maintenance. I think.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
all right, then I guess we need a motion to adjourn, we're done. All right,
Motion.
it's moved and seconded, approved, and I guess we're done.
Good, excellent.
Wow, that was quick.